Hello again. Defeat. Oh, the sweet jaws of salty, warm defeat. Never been better, if you ask me. And we'll be here today to talk about that, plus more exciting things, including other football. I'm joined to do that by JJ Bull.
Hello.
Hello there, how are you?
Oh, good.
Absolutely terrific. And of course, Jon Mackenzie. Hi, Jon.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so England just lost the Euros finals, 2-1. A deserved loss, I think we can all probably agree, certainly for that second half performance. We're going to chat about the game a little bit first, and then we're going to go through later on, and we've got some very exciting categories. Best X, of best all of then other things for the Euros. So if you're bored of the England chat, don't worry, stick around and we'll move on to brighter pastures very shortly. But let's start with that game, Jon. There were two halves in the game. In the first half, it felt a little bit more, not necessarily balanced, but it felt very stodgy, quite slow. I think you wouldn't have been too surprised that either team scored. The second half was really different, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the first half, England did what France did against Spain. So they had Declan Rice and Kobbie Mainoo going man-to-man against the eights, and then Phil Foden as a sort of 10, sitting on Rodri. We don't have the boards up, so people are just going to have a mancha.
Yeah, we've had a board issue today, so we're just going to be talking with voices.
Yes.
And try to use some descriptive terms.
Yes, I will.
Get people at home really, if you want to close your eyes and try to visualise, please do. Jon, take it away.
But you could draw along.
You could draw along, yeah,
pen
if you
and
want to.
paper out. But yeah, basically man for man in midfield, and then the two wide forwards in Jude Bellingham and not Phil Foden, Saka on the other side, in the half spaces, just trying to keep everything fairly compact and dropping into a low block, looking to hit on the break. And they did a good job. I thought that Spain were quite conservative in many respects. So there's a few situations where Spain would bait the press quite high, play through it, and they got certain situations where it felt as though they could do a counter-attack and they didn't actually go for it. And we saw the reason why in the second half why they might have been a bit more conservative, because the goal that England scored actually came from Spain being quite direct through Oyarzabal, who had a chance. Maybe could have held the ball up and waited for the rest of his team to catch up. So they were in quite a nice defensive structure, even though they were in possession of the ball. Didn't do that, and instead England went down the other end and scored. So I think it's one of those games, right, where it's going to be tetchy. It's a final. You don't want to regret losing the game rather than regret not winning. At least I think that's how a lot of teams feel during games like that. But like you say, yeah, I think in the second half, Spain opened up a little bit more. The game opened up a little bit more because Spain scored fairly early on in that second half, opened out a little bit. Spain got the goal, then sort of sat a little bit deeper, didn't want to press higher. England got back into it, and then the goal came after that. So I thought it was, as finals go, it was to be expected. But it was
nor the worst, probably.
Not the worst, yeah. But I think, as we were talking about at half-time, very much a game where England wanted to sort of sit deep, soak up pressure and hit on the break. The big changes for me was I think Harry Kane coming off and just allowing England a little bit more mobility in their higher press, which caused Spain a bit more of an issue building out.
Well, we'll come back to that, because I do want to talk about that change, and also looking forward to what that might look like. JJ, the thing that seemed most startling to me, and it's a theme we've seen throughout the tournament so far, was England seemed very content and happy to sit deep, as Jon was saying, and to defend and to soak up pressure. Then they go one down, and all of a sudden, for 5 minutes, they have all the ball. Spain sit deeper. England eventually score. And despite those more attacking substitutes, despite the commentators and the pundits still saying at that point, "Oh, it's a different England now. We're finally seeing it," they just immediately sit back again. I mean, I assume must be at least in part game plan. But that seemed like the most striking thing to me, was that when it got back to 1-1, it seemed like the only team that were going to score was Spain.
I think it's like momentum and the stuff you can't put in the game plan. Suddenly you just get a feeling where you can just surge forward. Yeah. Suddenly some players will step up. There's a bit where John Stones runs towards the opposite box, right? He just decides to take the game in his hands and runs. And then you see the mentality of certain players stepping up. It's like, I thought Spain were the best team in that tournament by miles. They're probably, this might be a bit of a far-fetched, a bit of a stretch, but one of the best tournament teams that I can remember watching, especially in the Euros. They could do everything in every phase of play. I think this is the worst I saw them play, because it's a final, and so like we'd normally be braver and take risks. But if I think a few players individually, and there's a few players like Lamal, a couple of others, maybe Fabian Ruiz, who the first touches wasn't quite as it would be, and normally it's like beyond perfect. So you can trust yourself to do weird things. So you can fire the ball into them, they can take it away and go with it. But I think because maybe it was a final, you're a bit nervous, you maybe don't trust your technique just quite so much. So the sensible thing is to play more of the possession-y kind of game. So they kind of had control of it, quite cagey in the first half. You can see they were the better team even though they weren't playing their best. Second half they start early, and then they play one of these risky passes through straight into Fabian Ruiz, the thing they've been doing all tournament long. And then there's the forward passes where I think Carvajal knocks it on first time when most players in the tournament, definitely everyone on the England team, wouldn't knock it forward. They take a touch because it's risky, you're going to bounce it loose. But Carvajal takes it on the bounce and pushes it forward, and that's how they get in behind. There's a couple of moves later on where I think particularly Williams and Yamal were linking in the final third. 1-2s, like that destroys any team if you're tight in a block. 1-2s, you pull them apart and get through, and then you see that's when they're really causing them trouble. But they're doing it with longer passes, like these longer first touch passes getting through.
It's worth saying, I think, that low blocks are hard to break down for any team, right? That's the way that teams play against Guardiola, is by sitting in a low block, and he has a team that he's had for seasons and seasons, and they can sometimes lose out in games because the opposition are doing a really good low block. So it's definitely the best way of playing against a team like that if you feel as though you don't have any alternative to it. So I thought Spain were quite conservative in the first half, and they didn't quite have any. England did a good job, I thought, of keeping the wingers quiet. There was no. They basically reduced everything to just. Swinging crosses into the box and seeing what happened, and that was about it in the first half. So they did a pretty good job of that. And then obviously once the goal goes in, the game has to open up, and then it felt a little bit more like a bit of a open affair at that point.
But when England scored, it did feel for about a few minutes that Spain could have maybe just fallen apart for a really important 10-minute section of the game.
Not for long enough. It felt like that for less than 5 minutes, I think.
But then that might be because England weren't just maybe pushing enough, or they just didn't have the personnel at the time. I can't remember who was on the pitch at the time, actually. I can't remember what the lineup was exactly.
Watkins, Cole Palmer, Bellingham was on...
at the time they scored, because Palmer scored the goal, of course, so Kane had gone off. And they looked better, and as soon as Kane went off, they looked much better because they could apply some pressure to Spain higher up.
Well, I was going to ask you guys about this because, what was interesting to me, more of a layman from a tactical point of view, was Harry Kane in these games. It felt like he's almost playing in the wrong team. He's obviously having to drop extremely deep or wanting to drop very deep to get on the ball. But given the way that England were playing against the sort of team that they were playing, it's very clear that they needed someone to run in behind, and that just wasn't Harry Kane.
I actually thought today that the thing that Watkins offered was the out of possession stuff. I thought in possession England were just sort of pumping it along a little bit. They didn't feel like they generated a huge amount by going in behind, which is, when you're watching a game of football and you're a fan, you just sort of, you think, well, there's loads of space there. Find the ball in there. We've got Watkins, he's faster than these two centre-backs, so go for it. But,
so you're saying, if anything, Kane probably suited that tactically better.
Yeah, I think they were better with Kane on the pitch in possession, because Kane's really good in possession. Where they were poor was out of possession. Spain had all the time in the world to just move the ball around and progress it down the field. And as soon as Watkins came on, just that little bit of mobility and added pep in the press, and it makes it much harder for Spain then to retain possession of the ball.
The question that lots of people will be asking, whether or not they should be, is the normal one that fans sitting at home can say, they should have started those players from the beginning of the game. What is both of you? I'm interested in both of your opinions on this, because it's been successful in the last couple of games to bring players like Watkins and Cole Palmer on in the second half, but there were lots of shouts for players like that to start. Do you think that would have made a difference, or do you think that's just not how substitutes work?
Well, I think the team he put out for the final makes sense, but he kind of stumbled upon that, I think, because he didn't start with Foden through the middle. He didn't start playing the box-shaped midfield, wherever it was, really. It was both a 5 and a 4 at the same time.
Stumbled upon it or worked it out as he went along.
They had so little possession as well, right? They spent a huge amount of time in their out-of-possession shape, which was the two central midfielders man-to-man, as we've said, Foden on the pivot, and then the wide forwards narrow in the half spaces. So I think a lot of the time, because it was for the first 20 minutes, it was like 20-80% possession. So you're always going to end up in your out of possession shape for most of the time, because you're not putting enough passes together, right? And
so how does that relate to which players should start?
So the idea was they were going to sit deep and absorb pressure. Then they were going to try and go long through players like Saka and Bellingham and Foden. You want then Harry Kane to be someone who can do the hold-up stuff, drop in, find the ball, and then play those three in running in behind. So that was the plan. If you bring players like Watkins and Palmer on from the beginning, what you're saying is we're just going to go. We want the game to be transitional. We want it to open out, and obviously that's not what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure that they were able to control the out of possession phases more. So they went for that for 60 minutes. They went a goal down, and then they were like, right, we'll then go a little bit more for this in the last 30 minutes. And like the goal that they scored was from a transitional moment, right? So you could argue that worked out, but. Again, the reason why they started the way they did was because that wasn't the plan to just go. It's no manager sits down and is like, well, what's the easiest way of scoring? Like running in behind. Let's just play all the players who run in behind. It's not that easy.
No. Okay.
But it does feel it's not a bad thing particularly, but like Southgate set that team up, like John said at the start, like to not lose rather than to win. So if you said not to lose, then if you get a goal from somewhere, it means you are well equipped to then guard that and play it through. And in the previous tournaments, they got through that with set pieces. A lot like how like Arsenal for a lot of the season did in the Premier League. Like it's a lot of set pieces and just getting that one goal from somewhere. But they really didn't have that in this tournament at all. They
were terrific at defending set pieces in this game, I thought, but attacking set pieces, no, it didn't really.
Yeah, nothing really worked. There was the one set piece. I think Shearer even said it in Cocon. The one good delivery they really had was that they almost scored from it, with Rice and the other chaps trying to go for it. I don't know. I think what you see is like England clearly have really good players. They look like what a team you build on FIFA or something like that. But there are too many things like that didn't make the other parts work. Whereas Spain are perfectly formed. Like everything there, it's just fallen into place. It's well put together by the coach, obviously, but it just suits everyone perfectly. Every single bit works, and they're so good in every phase of play that you have to have some luck. And you can. There's nothing really wrong with how Southgate set up for it at all.
I think that there is an interesting like meta conversation to have here about one of the big conversations that keeps cropping up in football tactics is, are players now losing freedom? Right, they're not given the space to do the things they used to do. As well, and so what we got now is like robotic footballers who are played in systems, and it curtails the freedoms of the individuals. Weirdly enough, like England set up to play like fairly risk-averse football in order to get the most out of their individuals, I think, and we saw that happening in the Netherlands game when the conditions suited them. But for the most part, I think England's individuals actually haven't benefited from that freedom, whereas with Spain, who are set up with that system, it's not a very rigid system, I would say, but it's still more of a system than what England have. That has actually brought out the best in some of their players within that system. So the wide players, we can talk about the central midfielders as well. I think that's what's so interesting to me, is that even the imposition of a fairly basic system, which gives all of the players roles, has actually allowed them the freedom within those roles to perform better than they might have done if it was just like go out there on the pitch and perform.
I'd love to hear John's philosophical arguments about free market economics with that sort of philosophical approach. But yes, JJ.
And exactly on that note, Spain have specialists in each individual phase, so you get the benefits of them. So like in your build-up, you have like Rodri and Fabian Ruiz, amazing players in that sort of section. In the middle of the pitch, again, the same players, but you get the benefit of Williams being able to run at people or Yamal being able to run at people, and then the strikers dropping in to allow Olmo and stuff to go in behind. And then you get to the final third, and again, you've got William, Jamal, Olmo, Morata. They're all so in tune with like 1-2s. Everything like clicks. That's a really good team.
Well, I think, given that we're shortly going to come to some categories, one of which is best team, I wonder if we'll speak about Spain a little bit more. Last thing I'd like to talk about with England is the future of Gareth Southgate. It's unclear, I think, after the tournament what Gareth Southgate will do. He was asked about it a couple of times beforehand. He doesn't. I'm not sure whether he knows himself. So we'll have to wait to see whether or not Southgate is going to stay as England manager or not. I think what's been interesting to sort of touch on the kind of meta-level conversation that you're having from a slightly broader perspective about international football. One of the very impressive things about Southgate as England manager is that he has studied winning tournament teams, how they play, how they approach it. But this tournament, although England got all the way to the final, we saw France, a team that Southgate has spent a lot of time studying under Didier Deschamps. They went out in the semi-final, a little bit unimpressive throughout the tournament. England, again, a final that they didn't quite win, and the tournament is won by a team that plays a style of football that you would be more likely to see in domestic football. So I wonder if the tide is turning. There's a scenario in my head where, the next 5-10 years, the tournaments start to be won by teams who are playing football slightly more in that way. With that in mind, if Southgate were to step down after the tournament, forgetting about whether or not he should, that's not the question I'm asking, so don't answer that one. But if he were to step down, can you think of someone who would you put in charge of the England team? My answer to John outside earlier was just wait a year for Pep Guardiola and then stick him in charge. But what do you think, JJ?
Jose Mourinho would be a bit of fun.
Come on. He's busy now in Turkey. He'll be having a fun time over there.
I mean, like I said, I don't think Southgate did anything really wrong with the setup in this final. I think, especially with Deschamps as an example of the manager, right? So he won the World Cup. No, he didn't. Did he win the World Cup with France? I can't remember.
Euros.
No, World Cup. Just World Cup.
They won the World Cup, right? They didn't win the Euros.
They didn't win the Euros.
Not the last
Italy
one.
Won the Euros. They won the World Cup.
I totally forget. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, because he's a player and a manager.
The back one. The one when Paul Pogba was playing. Though,
anyway, we can cut this out, can't we?
No, but it's fine.
Well, anyway, Didier Deschamps as an example is good because that team that won the World Cup or did well in the Euros before was sort of accidental because I don't think you'd have chosen Olivier Giroud as a real important part of that team, really, if you're putting the players together because they have bigger superstars. But he helped make it function really properly and everything. The players just sort of fit in to make that team function really well. This team, this time, something wasn't quite there. Maybe players at the wrong stage of their careers and stuff. Griezmann not as influential. And then you just get... It's similar to what England were, right? You're trying to want to get on individualness to get you through games and things. You can't always rely on it. If you had a system manager comes into England, I've never seen it work really. You have to rely on what your players do, so you get the best players on the pitch. England have this problem where, Kyle Walker might not play that much anymore, so then you'll maybe have Trent Alexander-Arnold who starts at right back, which means you get a really good player in there, but then you get all the problems with that. The problem is they have really good players, but they don't have the perfect team, and you can't really fix that unless you start sticking in players who aren't as good as the stars to make a team build. And who's going to do that? That's mad. You wouldn't do the best players.
Maybe is it or
Steve Clarke?
Yeah,
I wouldn't be putting Steve Clarke.
Wouldn't pick Steve Clarke.
No, I wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just trying to find one needle.
Spain manager did well. Steve Clarke. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah,
that was for your own benefit. I wouldn't have that.
Give me a name. You run the FA right now.
Yeah.
The English FA. And Gareth Southgate calls you and he says, "Listen, it's been great. I'm going to step down." Who did you mind go to straight away?
I don't know. First, Steve Cooper. He won the under 17s or something, didn't he? Sure. One of the young. Get one of the managers who won the under youth group ones. That's fine. Okay. Or get the women's team manager that won the Euros. Get that in.
Sure. Who do you pick then?
Erik ten Hag.
Erik ten Hag.
I agree with JJ.
The two players you mentioned outside have been mentioned in the live chat already, by the way. You said people who would be considered like Eddie Howe and
I just want to go for them because it's too obvious.
You've got to get the balance right. Because take for example Julian Nagelsmann, who is a very good domestic coach. I think even him coming into Germany, he was very aware of the fact that he couldn't impose the sorts of strictures and systems that he's doing at the domestic level. And Luis de la Fuente as well. We're talking about his team being the best team, but it's still, I think, a very sort of basic structure, right? It's not saying we want Pep Guardiola to come in and have these players playing like perfect positional play straight from the off. So I don't think you need to go for the sorts of coaches who are going to be stand out in the domestic game. There is still space, I think, for the coaches like someone like Eddie Howe or someone like, I think Potter, obviously Howe and Potter are very good coaches at the domestic level, but I think that the real trick is getting the coaches in who are able to recognise the balance they need to have between overthinking things, but also allowing the players to perform on the stage.
What about Jurgen Klopp?
Huh? Hasn't he recently turned down the US men's national team job?
I don't know.
I believe so.
I haven't been reading any news. I've just been watching TikTok videos about England's successes.
Montages.
Yeah, England montages. Okay, fine. Well, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to revisit this, hopefully not for another 2 years. So in which case, let's move on now to do the best Euros categories bit of the podcast, where we've got a very exciting list of things here to run through. We'll be looking for answers from you. We'll be looking for answers from you. I'll be looking for answers in the chat as well to see who's got the best answers to these. And for the odd one, I'm going to throw one in myself as well.
Good.
Not a very rogue one, but I'm not going to slow us down. But once or twice, I'm going to throw one in.
Okay.
The obvious place to begin, and the reason that, as several helpful commenters pointed out, why haven't they discussed Spain yet, is because the first category is who were the best team. Yeah. Now, I assume your answer is Spain, JJ.
I'm going to say España were the best team. They had the best players, and they were the best team. Also, they won.
Can you agree with Spain?
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue against Spain. I think you could make a case for Germany. They were very close to beating Spain in that game as well. And
what a shame that they went out in the quarterfinals.
What a shame that they lost to Spain.
Yeah, and I think as well, Germany coming off the back of a few disappointing tournaments. So I think that's. I mean, Spain also, really, but like. Yeah, the German national team has been on a bit of a low ebb for the last few tournaments, so nice to see them coming through and really challenging. And they've got some fun players as well, haven't they? So.
Okay, why was Spain the best team?
Because I think they made the most of what they had, and they got, like we were saying before, the balance right between structure and individuals. And we really benefited from being able to watch Nico Williams and Yamal as well. And what we were saying before is like not just have they use the same kinds of structures they've used in the past with for example, Luis Enrique, but they've been able to implement other facets to that game, which, as we talked about in previous live streams, the gravity that you get from players like Yamal and Williams is so much that
España.
Yeah, it pulls players towards you and it creates space elsewhere to be exploited. So again, it's like a really nice mix of like the fact that really strong individuals can actually add to system approaches as well. So yeah, I've really enjoyed watching them from that point of view.
Anything to add to that?
No, just reiterating things said before. Because they were good in every phase of play, they're good at everything. In possession, playing transition, good out of possession. And then I think also the thing I liked about them is that they were really brave on the ball. They played like risky passes and they benefited from it massively. It's easy to lose games in tournament football that way, but they benefited hugely, and I think that is a real plus point. Like they played football the right way, the way I want to watch, and they had great individual players that worked well in a cohesive unit.
Also, with you mean Lamar. He's 17 years old, obviously, today as he wins the tournament. I wonder if he could win maybe many over the course of his career. I always get excited when a player so young wins an international tournament that early, because you think, hey, maybe there's a record breaker there, on the right cycle. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Someone in the chat just called me a weird, overweight, library-looking guy.
You don't look like a library.
Thanks, man, but I am overweight. Now, let's move on to the next category. Well done to Spain. Best player. Best player. Now, of course, you may find yourself gravitating towards a certain somebody from the Spain team. I don't know if you will or not, but you are free to pick from anyone, Ollie Watkins. What do you think?
Fabian Ruiz.
Yeah, sure.
You can say that Lamine Yamal could be the option because his numbers were amazing. His first chances created and all these sorts of crazy things for his age. He's a very good player. But I think Fabian Ruiz is one of those beautiful players to watch. The one who would star on a five-a-side game wherever he goes. He just first touch perfect, risky passes, helps drop deep, does incredible things in the final third. Really pretty to watch.
We were sat with Mark Carey, the Athletic, watching that game, and you and him were talking about Fabian just ahead of the second Spain goal. Do you remember?
Oh, he doesn't. Yeah, I was just saying
you were just pointing out the open passes. You both said if the ball keeps going to him with that much space, they're going to score, and then 10 seconds later.
Yeah, I think it was. Is it the first goal or the second one?
Second one.
The second one. Reeves picks it up and just pings that ball forward. Yeah, it's completely essential to how Spain have played in that game. I mean, Rodri's like the best midfielder in the world probably at the moment, or especially his position. But Ruiz is love watching him.
I think it's worth mentioning Rodri as well. Like he's had a pretty good season, and he has this record now of like just winning pretty much every game that he plays in, apart from the ones that involve Scott McTominay. Right?
Indeed, it's hard to get through a live stream without you mentioning Rodri. So,
it's true.
Or indeed Scott McTominay.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have is Rodri your player, or would you agree with Fabian?
Yeah, I think I'd go with Rodri, because I think so much of what he does allows Spain to tick I think that you could argue that, I mean, you said that Spain were better when Rodri went off tonight. I think that, again, that comes down to game state as well, with the game opened out a lot more in the second half. But Rodri is metronomic, and I think this tournament we've actually seen Rodri after having a bit of a break. And I thought, a lot of the criticisms that he's had this season about his inability to cover large spaces, I think a lot of that just comes down to the fact that he's just been overplayed over the last few seasons. And I thought he looked pretty fresh in this tournament, and he was sort of back to his best. It seemed as though he was maybe playing injured in this game, so maybe not surprising that he was brought off. But he's just remarkable, and I think it's been. I guess it's been a long time since, maybe never, the best player in the world arguably is playing in that position, right? To spend so much time talking about that kind of player means that he must be something special. Yeah.
Well, I'll just throw one in there. My best player of the tournament was, of course, the one and only Luke Shaw.
Oh, nice.
Obviously, that's a joke answer, but I want a little shout for Luke Shaw anyway, because I love that guy. And when you watch Luke Shaw play a really good game, there are a few like Luke Shaw.
He's very good.
He's terrific.
Made a huge difference to England.
Huge difference.
What's your take on the sort of whole Luke Shaw? Can we call it a debacle? Like just taking Luke Shaw and hoping that he got better when he was clearly like not fit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, keener football minds than me have spent the entire tournament telling me that if and in conversations where they've been kind and complimentary about England as well, not the kind of the crazy people, but people have said the one unforgivable thing that England did was go to the tournament without a fit left back, and I think it's hard to say for me, just as a viewer, whether Luke Shaw's introduction in those last couple of games, whether the big difference that obviously made is because it's Luke Shaw or because it's a left-footed left back, and the having a slightly different option. Unfortunately, I think there was one or two times today where Luke Shaw had the opportunity to run down the byline and actually cross it in with his left foot. So it didn't make that much difference in a purely attacking sense, but. I just think he's great, and I think there were other left backs available, right?
Yeah, I mean, there always are, right?
You could have taken someone.
Yeah, it would have been a step down, obviously. But.
Yeah. What's interesting though is you watch those. It's hard to know how much to glean from some of the social media videos around the England camp, but I watched a couple of them where people were getting the England players to respond with one word when they mentioned a teammate or a colleague. And when Trippier came up, there were a number of people that described him as a leader or a voice in the dressing room or whatever. So I think it's clear that Trippier has some kind of important role off the pitch as well. It's always hard to know.
What would you do if you had to do that for us?
What would I say for you? I'd have to make sure that the microphones were turned off before. Well, maybe we'll come back to that later. Just before I pop you in a cab and send you home. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right, next category. Where do we go from here? Where could we possibly go? Well, of course, the only answer is best goal. Best goal, JJ Bull. I mean, there are a number to choose from this tournament. It wasn't always the best tournament, but there were some terrific goals, weren't there? There
were, but I'm going to pick Lamine Yamal's versus France.
Yeah.
Because it comes from a really good passing move with this really dangerous pass through the middle.
Yeah.
Dani Olmo turns past a line of four and turns it and pushes it forward. So they get the reward for the risk, and then he punts it in from 30 or 25 yards, top corner. Perfect. Love it.
Pings in off the post, doesn't it?
So one of the best noises is that, and then the sound of the net. It's perfect. The whoosh.
What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. There was lots of good England goals because they had to rely on good England goals, didn't they? So I mean, the Bellingham overhead kick is. Yeah. I think in terms of the moment, everything that is encapsulated in that moment with England about to get knocked out is a sort of remarkable moment. And there was just, I mean, all of their goals were remarkable in many respects.
Yeah. It's in some ways, I think maybe technically Ollie Watkins are more impressive, but.
I mean that's good. That is a banger, that one as well.
It's an incredible goal. It's absolutely incredible goal. Yeah.
However, I've forgotten everything else that happened.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember there being a Yaremchuk goal for Ukraine where it was really nice. They did everything right for Ukraine. So go and check that one out. I like those ones where it doesn't look particularly impressive, but everything that the three players involved in the goal has done has to be perfect for it to come off.
Yeah.
So it's like an aggregation of good actions from three players.
Sean Nielsen in the chat reminding us about the Denmark goal against England. That was a very good one as well, wasn't it? Who scored that?
Hjulmand.
Right, yeah, there you go. Okay, thanks, chat. Right, now, moving on.
The only one they suggested?
Well, no, there were more, but many of them were the ones we already suggested. No, they weren't all wrong. Yeah, I mean, Xavi Simon's goal for the Netherlands also was a very... I mean, there were so many good ones, weren't there? There were so many good... Even Cole Palmer's goal this evening was very good.
The Romania goals were nice, weren't they, in that game where they clonked a couple in.
I seem to remember Germany's 5th goal against Scotland being pretty good as well.
Right. Yeah, a couple of them in there were pretty good, weren't they? Yeah.
No, was it not? Oh yeah, it was Fulcry. I thought you were referring to...
One of them was really good.
That's right. I mean, the two young inside forwards, Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz, both scoring in that game. I mean, they were wonderful goals. Oh God, they were heady days back then, weren't they?
Wirtz scored that really nice goal to go draw level with Spain as well from the Fulcry knockdown.
And there was a shout in the chat here for... Oh, I've lost it now. Because it moved so fast in here. Someone was saying about Arda Güler's goal.
Something. Yeah.
There we go.
You telling the chat to slow down, take turns.
Yeah, take turns, chat. Goodness me. Right, now moving on, and get your answers to this one in the chat. We'll look for these as too. I like this one. Best unexpected good performer. Player. I'd like to go first for this one, if I may. And I say this because this was, due to injury, a player began to start that wasn't starting regularly, and that was Olmo, who was only really replacing Pedri, who was unbelievably good, right? I mean, turning in tight spaces. That guy, and the intelligence you see watch him just play. I thought he was terrific. He was scary to watch tonight. And for a player that wasn't expected to even be in the first 11, what a great tournament he's had.
Yeah, he was... I mean, there's nothing more to add to that. He was magic. Sure. I knew he was good before, but now he seems like he's top tier good.
I didn't know. I've seen him around at tournaments before. I thought, I know this guy. So he looks a lot like an ex-professional Rocket League player. So I always remember him in my head, Lethmir. What a loser thing for me to say. But I didn't know until this tournament, JJ Bull, that he was.
And that goal against France where he goes around,
there we go.
The defender
and part of the Yamal one as well.
Best unexpected good performer player, JJ.
I didn't think Marc Cucurella was good at all before now, and he was very good. So I think just for unexpectedness. That would be it for me.
He was terrific. I was disappointed when he went down with that slight elbow to the face.
He's got a strong case of the weasels.
I understand the professional necessity. Nothing against the play. That's exactly the right thing to do. But in the heat of the moment, I feel okay saying to you, I didn't like it. What about you, John? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good shout, Cucurella. I think, especially because he kept Alejandro Grimaldo out of the team as well.
Yeah.
A guy who's lost once this last season, so pretty impressive. And just I think the perfect kind of international football player, where he's just quite terrier-like, right? Where he is front foot, steps up, and sometimes he's going to get got around, but I think at this level, with the way that international football is, if you have a player like that who is just going to get tight, make it hard for players to turn him, given that the structures aren't as well rehearsed as they are at the domestic game, I think it actually affords your team quite a lot as well. So I would agree with that. I think.
I'm going to do 3 more quickly. Just chuck them in.
Yeah, please do.
Reinders and Schouten, is that you say his name?
Schouten.
Netherlands. I'd never really watched them before, and I thought they were both great.
Yeah.
I thought Cody Gakpo as well.
Cody Gakpo mentioned in the chat.
Yeah, he stepped up. And it's interesting because then we'll see what happens to him at Liverpool going forward, where he plays left, which he did very well from. And then I've forgotten the other one.
There's a few
Calafiore, Italy.
A few Turkey players as well. I think or Georgia players. Sorry, and that people were not expecting to do well. Exactly. And then players like Mikatadze as well. Those players coming through and having great tournaments as well.
A couple mentioned from the chat. Gakpo was one of them. Vitinha.
Yeah,
another.
But Vitinha's been great for
not
ages.
Unexpected. Okay. Yeah. What about Mainu? A lot of people thought that Mainu had a terrific tournament. Perhaps wasn't starting in the first game.
I think impressive to come in those conditions, especially when the first 2 players to play in that role didn't survive. So it's tough tough for him.
Didn't survive.
Didn't
something very bad happened.
Didn't hit the news, weirdly. But,
Southgate's very harsh.
And the last one mentioned from the chat as well,
good show.
N'Golo Kante.
Yeah.
Perhaps for different reasons that people might not have expected.
Didn't think he still have it, but by golly,
he had a really ridiculous Rodri-like streak as well, right? Where it was like he'd not lost a game in ages.
Do you know what's really weird about Kante being good was that he was amazing on the ball. Like he's fizzing passes around and stuff. You forget
always
how good a player he is.
Not GIF though, right?
Yeah, always has been. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, now best unexpected good performer team. JJ Bull, who was a team that played well this Euros that you perhaps weren't expecting to do so well?
Well, I think Switzerland were way better than I thought they were going to be, and I didn't realise how good they were until I started. I did the Totally Football show a few times and had to do. I kept covering Switzerland, so the more I looked into them, the more you're like, wow, they're actually really good. They're really good in qualifying as well.
Yeah.
Great team. I thought Austria were excellent as well, especially tactically. It was really interesting to see how his system manager comes into it. Didn't work out in the end. And even it's a bit silly, but I thought Slovenia were oddly good. I thought they were decent against England.
They were very good.
Slovakia
Slovakia. So those would be my 2 or 3.
I would throw a shout in. I know we've already talked about them, so we're not going to do it again. But Spain. I mean, Spain weren't expected to be favourites for this tournament. They weren't expected to be as good as they were. They were.
I mean, we nearly didn't include them in our list of favourites at the beginning, but
I don't know why I keep making noises.
Although I did make the video that said that they might be the best.
Yeah, no, you called it.
Just to jump back before you answer, so one, because I think it is worth a shout. But best unexpected good performer.
Team. Open brackets. Team. Close brackets.
Yes, open brackets. Giorgio Mamardashvili.
That's player.
The
goalkeeper.
Georgia goalkeeper. Yeah, I wanted to mention that one.
Is there any other?
Did we say that already?
Unexpected good performers teams.
Sorry.
In any other unexpected?
That's for you. Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I mean, I would push back on Austria. I think Austria came in off the back of a really good qualifying campaign, and I don't think they were hugely.
What about normal people though? Did normal people expect us to?
I hadn't watched them.
Expected that. I didn't expect.
I get to be allowed to be normal because I didn't.
We're not doing best unexpected bad performer.
Romania.
Yeah, I mean Romania's tournament was maybe off the back of that the win that they had first game up, where I think that was it against Ukraine. Where I think they got a couple of low value chances and then were able to hold on to it. And I think once you've got 3 points in the format that the tournament was, it was definitely easy for you to get through the group stages. So I think that definitely impacted it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Even that Turkey-Georgia game was amazing fun as well. So both those teams.
Hell for leather, I believe. Is
that to me looks like a 0-0 every time you see it in any sort of fixture list.
Yeah.
But that was amazing, that game.
Okay, moving on now. We have best child. Best child at the Euros. I mean, I assume that the answer is Yamil Lamor.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the most childish child, wasn't he? He's very young.
England got a lot of. I mean, what can we say? Under 21 as a child? Do we say that? Because they can be on the under 21 team, can't they? Yeah, but they could be in the.
Yeah, lots of youngsters in the team.
You're 38. Sometimes I think of you as a child.
Yes.
It's a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, the only real young one in England is Kobe Mainoo, really, isn't it?
I mean, Bellingham's only 21. Yeah,
but he acts like he's 38.
What about the others? There are other young ones.
I think Mainoo's had a great season. I think it's
Cole Palmer, he's young, 19.
It is worth celebrating
20,
Kobe Mainoo, but you seem to be talking about.
Sorry, I'm talking.
No,
you know what it is? It's been a long tournament. I'm 40 minutes into the live stream, and I've sort of.
You're just saying words now, aren't you? You're just
22.
Saying names.
And I said to JJ Bull when we were in the kitchen just beforehand, I was a mixture of sad and I had a headache. I ate a sugary thing for the first time in about 3 months, and boy, I'm feeling it. The heart's pumping, as they say, and that's louder than I was during the sound check.
What was the sugary thing you ate?
It was a shortbread cookie with little bits of.
What a boring thing to eat for your first.
Well, it was in front of me. It was listen. I was 1 minute it was 1-1, then it was 2-1, then we were losing, and then there was a cookie there, and I thought, listen, if now's not the time to eat some cheat,
Do you know the Cookie Monster has a English or UK relative in Simpson Street lore called the Biscuit Monster?
Really? The Biscuit Monster?
Yeah.
Really?
I think the Cookie Monster says lots of different things depending on where you live as well. Like if there's a Spanish version of the Cookie Monster as well.
El Cookie.
El Cookie, El Tickle.
What they say.
Yeah, I don't know either. But fine, best child we've done. Best manager. This one's an unusual one because how does one define the best manager at a tournament like this? Presumably the manager that wins the tournament. But if you don't want to say De La Fuente, no worries.
It can only be Ralph Rangnick, I think. I think a vastly underrated manager. I think it was very clear that his team were very well coached, and
interesting.
If anything, they were unlucky to get knocked out.
Okay, what do you think, JJ Bull?
The Swiss manager.
Right, and what's that person's name?
Murat Yakin, I believe.
Yes, that's right. John got it correct.
Right. Yeah. We were just testing.
Do I win the quiz? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
I think just to have that bunch of players play really interesting football and make them look better than some of their parts.
Yeah.
That is why he wins the award for me.
Okay, terrific, fine. Here's a really fun one. A game that had no right to be as good as it was, John. What was the best game for you that you just, shouldn't have been that good?
England 0, Slovenia 0, right up there for me. 90 minutes I'll never get back.
I remember how angry you were after that. Give me a real answer.
Yeah, I think the Georgia-Turkey game was one that... There was quite a few of those games, wasn't there, where no one expected anything of them, and they ended up being the best games. And it was because both teams just didn't care about defending. They were like, the best chance we have here is to score more goals than the opposition, whereas a lot of the other teams, I think, were either quite stodgy, or they had like... Their upside was, let's play a really nicely structured mid-block, which gets some people going. I wouldn't like to comment on whether or not those kind of people are like me, but most people don't enjoy that. So there was a lot of sort of very slow games as well. So, yeah.
Well, a little. I mean, I know this isn't my answer for this one. It isn't strictly answering the question, because this game absolutely had a right to be good and was expected to be good in an ideal world. Spain-Germany in the quarterfinals, I think it was the best game. I really enjoyed it. And Julian Nagelsmann, people pointing out in the chat as well, a good shout perhaps for best manager, based on the relative lack of success that Germany have experienced over the last couple of tournaments. You could see something coming from that team, and it's a bit unfortunate that they ran up against De La Fuente's Spain in the quarters, isn't it?
Spain had a pretty tricky run, didn't they? Of like, was it Germany, Portugal, France, England? That's like... It's a horrible run of fixtures.
Sure, and then they still won.
And they played
no one will be saying they were
Croatia
lucky.
And Italy in the group stages too, and a very rambunctious Albania.
Just lucky for them that they didn't come up against one of those low block teams. Imagine that. Yeah,
it's true. Well, they did tonight. They flew through it.
Have you got a game that was as good as it was? Or,
the one I said before, Turkey, Georgia.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. The first half of France versus Spain was also really fun.
Yeah.
That's the one where you had it as like a 0-0 draw, didn't you? And there was like 3 goals in about 15 minutes or something.
Well, we will come to points are bad.
We will.
Worry not, John. We'll come to points
Just making sure that we've got that one
Spain,
in.
Georgia is good. Like Germany shouldn't have. I mean, Scotland getting pummeled by Germany was pretty bad. But
that was a good opening game.
Yeah,
You're right.
Was,
I forget about that. Back at the game.
Seems so long ago.
It does seem a long time. At the beginning of civilization, you sit down and watch the TV. Go, maybe. I should do that 5 times really to make the. I'm not going to commit. I keep making noises. Yeah.
I think we're going to do best moments. It's not on the list, but like the Scotland team leaving to a Bavarian band was pretty good, wasn't it? I mean, you see them leaving the hotel and it was like an Oompa Loompa band. That was one of my favourite moments.
Best moments for me watching the Netherlands fans do the stamp across thing on the way to the game. Did you see that all in concert together? Well, very exciting.
Well, you must have lots of favourite moments from this tournament.
So many favourite moments.
Good England moments.
I think a combination of like deep levels of anxiety and also being in a WhatsApp chat with you guys, you're pretty happy you're kind of
I think I was
England
well behaved
neutral
generally.
Of course you were well behaved, but it's something to be a fan of a team and then be surrounded by people whose professional duty it is to point out to you how bad they are whenever they do something great. So there were 1 or 2 moments.
You flip this around to bad moments, but like, what would you say was your favourite England moment?
They were very brave.
They were brave. My favourite England moment was, and I talked about this on the last live stream, was after the Ollie Watkins goal, after the game finished, final whistle blows, Harry Kane runs onto the pitch and gives Ollie Watkins a big hug. Because, I said this then, I'll say it now, for me, Obviously, I want them to win. That'll be great. But it is just football. It's not, it doesn't mean everything in the world. It means a lot more to the players that are there and to their families than it does to me, right? And so for the players that were there to score those goals, for Bellingham to score his overhead kick, for Watkins to score that incredible goal in the semi-final, for Harry Kane to be such a statesman-like captain and to be okay with coming off after an hour in those most important games and still be happy and still, I'm sure, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure he gives a good post-match interview today, right? I'm full of admiration for that approach. So I think whenever there were moments where you got to watch a group of people supporting each other, I'm a glutton for that stuff.
You love a good story, don't you?
I love that stuff, and for that reason, it's why I don't mind that they didn't win. I think they make it to the final. They all looked out for each other. They won't go home with regrets, I don't think. I think they'll be proud of themselves.
I think a lot of them have raised their profile as well. Like it's ridiculous because Ollie Watkins has been a fantastic player for seasons now, but for a lot of people, that's the first time they've seen him sort of do something.
I didn't even know who he was.
the England crowd is like a group of people who don't usually watch.
He was a fan that just ran on the pitch to score the goal.
Sure, yeah. Incredible.
And 10 years ago, he was playing in the sixth tier of English football. So it is nice to see players like that get their flowers on the biggest stage of them all.
On the biggest stage, the Euros. Yeah. What about you? Best moment?
I don't know. I don't think about moments. I just think about the big picture.
What about you? Best big picture? No, best moment?
Well, the most fun thing about supporting a team like Scotland is just getting to be in the tournament feeling like a real boy. And so like the build-up to before the Germany game was so much fun. So just with a bunch of my like close friends and my lady, just to go into the pub, and then we've got all like kilts and Scotland things on, and then we're 5-0 down in like 10 minutes. It's pretty funny because like Adele, my partner, doesn't know what it's like to support Scotland because she's English.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny. I mean, like, this is normal.
Yeah.
This is what it's really like to support a football team.
But we're there.
Yeah, and then you can see, like, you can find the light in the darkness.
Yeah.
Because the darkness surrounds you always, but yet it's there.
Well, and the light for some of those Scotland players, depending on what happens in the future, again, to take the same sentiment with the England players, Scotland, a team that don't always reach the major tournament finals.
Usually don't, yeah.
Usually don't. Those players get to tell their grandchildren about that. You know what I'm saying? They get to boast and brag about that in pubs for all of time.
I'm not sure how much they'll be wanting to talk about that.
Sit down with Grandad and watch the German team batter us 5-0.
Antonio Rudiger's grandchildren can talk about how he's the only Scottish player whose name doesn't begin with muck to score.
There you go.
Yeah, but then I watched the England-Slovakia game in a different pub, surrounded by English fans, and when Bellingham scored the goal, everyone was really happy. It was quite nice.
Sure.
Less so when Kane.
Well, we're on to now the last couple of categories. The first one, spiritual victors. I'm tempted to give this to Scotland maybe, but what do you think?
Well, I think it should go to those fantastic Scottish fans who really set the atmosphere in a...
It's true.
Probably is them. Well done, lads.
Well done to
Scotland. We had a
fans.
Roman Catholic semi-final and a Protestant semi-final, and then the Roman Catholics won the final, so they must be technically the spiritual victors, right?
Right, yeah, I wondered where he was going there.
This is a good thing to bring up on the...
Yeah, I was nervous. But no, you really pulled it back on that one. Well done, John. Yeah, it could have gone really bad. You could have said... now listen, best story, I thought that was a long noise. I was making a long noise there, wasn't I? Best story. I've thrown this one in there, a little cheeky one, so that I can promote our good friend and colleague, Sebastian Stafford Bloor, who he's not here tonight, and he hasn't been here with us throughout the tournament because he's following his dream.
He's a real journalist.
He's a real journalist.
He's very good at it.
I mean, he lives in Germany, so he's nearby.
He's a Germany expert.
He's a Germany expert. He covered the German team for The Athletic. He was at the England semi-final as well. He's been working his little socks off, has that man. And congratulations to him for all the fantastic work he's done. If you are a subscriber to The Athletic and you missed some of Seb's pieces, go back and reread them because some of them are terrific. And the one I wanted to shout about most, because this is maybe another shout for best moment for me of the tournament, is Seb wrote a brilliant story about transport infrastructural breakdown in Germany, which is something he moans to me about on a weekly basis pre the tournament. We talked about it months ago. We said, that would make a good video. We should make a video because everyone thinks Germany has the best transport infrastructure in the world. No, said Seb. Seb. You know, you never know when the train's going to come. And there was it Gelsenkirchen? Was that where the it was after one of those early stage games, and
it was really slow.
It was really slow. There was one train, and there were people on the platform for ages.
I saw so many stories of people just flying out and couldn't get to the game in time. Yeah.
That's right. And anyway, Seb wrote a story about it the next day, and about some of those issues, as well as being very complimentary about the tournament generally and the hosts generally. And the day after, he was all over the Bild website. Bild, one of the big tabloids in Germany, name-checked, review what English journalist thinks of Germany. And that was a very funny couple of days for old Seb. But he's done a great job. Well done, Seb. Best story? Have you got a best story, JJ?
Yes, absolutely. And that story is the story of the Euros.
Yeah, as a whole.
Bringing everyone together as a whole.
Do you think it's been a good tournament, though? Because a lot of people, I think, were quite critical. I quite enjoyed the group stages and
I enjoyed the whole tournament. It was fun.
A lot of people were saying this is the worst one for a long time. I don't know.
No, it's fun. I think it probably helped that we weren't having to do live streams every single night after every single game.
Tiring.
Yeah.
I'm tired now. Yeah. I think it's been a good tournament. Yeah, I think sometimes the football wasn't maybe what we would have wanted, but I also think people go into major tournaments expecting and having forgotten. You know, in 4 years' time, no one will remember how boring the football was. They'll remember the last-minute goals and how brilliant Spain was.
People don't do that after 90 minutes. Like the Hungary-Scotland game was one of the worst games of football I've ever seen.
Yes.
And then Hungary scored at the end, and everyone was like, "What a great game that was!"
It's the best game I've ever seen. Yeah, and maybe that's fine, right? You know, for something to be defined to qualify as a best game, does it have to be excellent for 90 minutes? I don't think so. You know, one moment can lift the rest of it. Right?
People went from being like, "Oh, we've got our football back," when there was a few long-range shots.
Yeah.
And then it was like, "Oh, this is the worst tournament ever. Where are all the fun players?" So,
sure.
You know, that's how it goes. People are fickle.
And there were a lot of unexpected results and exciting games at Qatar 2022, weren't there? So perhaps as well that's people's expectation was slightly raised as a result of that.
This is different to club football, isn't it? It is fun watching the national teams for a bit. There's something different about it.
Ready for club football again, though.
Yeah.
I'd like a little break.
You've got a little break, you'll be fine.
Okay.
I hope Harry Kane wins a trophy next season. I think he deserves one, you know.
What's he going to win? Bundesliga?
The Bundesliga.
I did see a couple of quotes, one from Kyle Walker, who said he would give up most of his Man City trophies to win the Euros.
To do.
And then there was one with Harry Kane straight afterwards, which was like, it would be the crowning moment of my career if I won the Euros. So he couldn't quite say the same thing.
Bless him. He's got to be one of the best players ever who's never won a trophy. It's quite incredible, isn't it? Okay, final one now. We've kind of already covered it, I guess. This is what was good about the tournament. This is the final category. What was good about the Euros tournament?
Started with a bang.
Yeah.
It seemed like everyone was having a good time out in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
There were lots of goals, really good games. It seemed for the start of it like not every team was doing a grind out 0-0s and just weaseled away to a 1-0 win from a corner or something like that.
Sure.
Those days were gone, and then they get to the knockout stage and they were back.
Well, of course.
As ever, it always is. But I think Spain winning with the best team playing in the right way, not losing to a Weasley team, I think was really good.
Yeah.
I think the standard tactically is higher than it's been forever, probably.
Yeah.
And I think that meant that there was some interesting things that happened in the group stages, because there were certain teams who you might not expect to cause problems who did. So I think, I mean, again, you can argue whether or not that's good or bad, but the fact that you have teams like Slovenia, Slovakia, Albania coming through and making the most of what they have and causing teams to sweat, and some of them going through and almost causing upsets, I think that's a good thing in the long run, because it does sort of upset the apple cart a little bit. And I think, more power to those kind of teams for being able to push deeper in those tournaments as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go. There's only one thing left to do, of course, as we round out Euro 2024, which is to read the results of points are bad, or PAB as we call it in the shorthand.
A really important competition, I think.
A very important competition, and also what it says about where people finish and in the direct correlation to how much they know about football. John, right? You and I would agree with that. I think the better your score, the lower your score, the more of a football expert you are.
So, yeah.
But then I do often go with either the spirit of the game, wind-ups, Or
See,
Yeah, you said
I
this.
told you he was going to try and decanonise.
Well,
it,
when I pick 5-0...
Hold on, this is what happens when we play video games sometimes against each other with our friends, and when someone's having a bad time, they throw the game on purpose, and when they were already losing, and then at the end they go, "What? It wasn't even a real game. It's decanonised."
I'm not doing that.
That's what you've done.
I don't mind if you get a few wild wins in, because then you might win. I'd rather win the way I want to win,
sure,
rather than win by winning off corners.
How would you feel about coming joint last?
I would feel that's probably accurate, considering the way I played the game this time.
In joint 4th place or joint 3rd place, if we're feeling,
you're a joint 4th or a joint 3rd kind of person.
Hard to say, yeah.
Glass half
full. Now, 96 points. We all finished under 100. There was one game fewer than the World Cup. But I think it was rare that you added more than 4 points. So all finished under 100. Just one less game because there was no
going to be able to recover from. I think it has Scotland.
Isn't the World Cup 32 teams?
And
this was 24.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, listen, if it was, then don't make me feel bad for finishing under 100 because that was my crowning joy. You finished 4th, joint with Seb Stafford-Bloor. A comment on that, sir?
Well, he's a real proper football journalist.
Yeah.
Adult, great guy.
Great guy. So you're happy to share a podium with Seb?
If I have 10% of Seb's great guyness, then I'd be happy.
Yeah.
Also, I shouldn't have kept saying Scotland would win games. And I think they've made it difficult for me. But I don't mind. As I say, I would rather win the way I want to win than go against any sort of dictator-led way of winning.
Right. A comment on John's win, I assume.
I will not reveal my sources.
Well, I came in 2nd or 1st, if you want to think about it more with a handicap. Sort of, I like to think of it as 1st, but officially I came in 2nd with 94 points, just 2 ahead of you in 96, by the way. So if you hadn't memed so hard on that Netherlands game, then there was a good chance, particularly with your result today, there's a good chance you would have beaten me.
What was the game I lost under the Netherlands?
You had to. Well, you decided you had to predict 4-1 to the Netherlands if there was any chance of you catching John.
Against England.
Who were playing against England? Yeah.
That's the same.
So you added quite a lot of points there, but alas,
no regrets.
No regrets. But in first place, of course, and I would like a round of applause here because John held steady throughout the campaign. John got ahead in, what was it, like day 5 or something, and then like a spirited rat in a corner, you stayed ahead, didn't you? And you stayed many nights. You stayed up counting, doing maths on your hand. What do I have to pick to stay ahead of Joe mathematically? Not the spirit of the game, but as we see from international tournaments, is the way to win.
I think it is the spirit of the game to beat you. That's all I ever would look to do.
Sitting here criticising the way England play in a major tournament, but then doing maths 3 points are bad.
Doing exactly the same.
This is the spiritual equivalent.
What score did I get today for that game?
I believe you got a
perfect score.
A perfect score.
Yeah,
a perfect score.
so
and you finished on 85 points. A round of applause for John. Points are bad. There we go.
Thanks,
well
Jay
done. Well done. Now, of course, you won't have to wait quite as long, will you, John, to defend you? Because I won't explain all of how we're going to do this now, but we will be playing some points are bad throughout the Premier League season, this coming season. So I thought that sentence was going somewhere, but it wasn't. It wasn't going anywhere. Alas, look forward to that. Thank you as per usual for joining us for this live stream. Hope the Euros has been as fun for you as it was for me until about an hour and a half ago. JJ Bull, thank you.
Hello.
Jon Mackenzie, thank you. And producers Jamie and Don, thanks very much. Until next time.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Hello.
Auf Wiedersehen. I was going to say au revoir.
What did you used to say at the end of the podcast?
Goodbye.
Bienvenue.
Bye.